pandemic has disrupted the life as we know in all aspects, particularly in transport, communication, and our day to day existence. Life will not be the same again, perhaps, once the. Again? Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I am Nitin Gokhale. And today we are in this webinar on an important topic because life as we know has been disrupted by the COVID pandemic across the globe. And many aspects of life, especially in transport, communication, and our day to day existence, will not be the same again when this pandemic gets over or it's tapering off. So, how will technology and particularly 5G technology play a role in the post COVID 19 life across the globe? To discuss all that, we have with us on this webinar very important and distinguished panelists. Rajen Vagadia is the Vice President and President of Qualcomm India and SAARC. He brings in the technology aspect to this discussion. Jayadeva Ranade, President of China Center for China Studies and Analysis, and of course a former intelligence officer who worked for India's external intelligence agency and a very distinguished China watcher for all this. Shortly, we'll also be joined by Solomon Yu, the Vice President of and CEO of Republicans Overseas from the United States. The moment he joins us, we will of course discuss with him. But let me start with Rajan, who's the technology head here, or the technology man who will give us the prognosis of how the world will look in the coming months and years. So, Rajan, the 5G technology, which is futuristic, how will it play a role in life as we know, life as it will pan out in the next few years or in the next decade or so?
So, good evening. I think one thing within 5G is actually not futuristic. Unfortunately, it's the present, so it's already there. And
Okay.
and what we have seen, I think we have all experienced. I'm not talking anything which we have not experienced. What we've seen in this COVID-19 across the globe, not just India. It's not one territory or one city or one town or one country. Across the world, what has been demonstrated is that a powerful, flexible, and a stable network, which we all probably leverage on during this emergency response, has actually supported education, has supported business productivity, has supported government operations, and hundreds and millions of people have all of a sudden, we can say that in this world of social distancing, which was a word probably in the past we would have loved not to use, has become a reality. We got connected with technology on the basis of this technology. What we have seen is that what you are seeing today is the existing. For countries like India, where we don't have 5G, and then there are a lot of other countries who have already rolled out 5G. There are nuances of this. I think what we are glad to see in countries like India is that despite all these changes, and these changes we may not visualize it, and for an end consumer or a citizen, we don't realize what happened. And actually, but if you look at the networks which are feeding all the data pipes to us in the home, look at what happened to them. They were never designed to take this sort of loads. They were never designed that there's a concentrated load coming from one place, one home. In the past, if I was consuming in a family, let's say 100 GB a month, the distribution was over 4 or 5 or 7 or 10 devices. And these devices were typically at no given point of time where they were there, but the consumption wasn't there at that level. I have my daughter who is doing their online classes since her college has shifted to online for the next 2 terms. I have myself, wife, all of us are actually working. So these networks have actually supported a lot. Yet we see the challenges which in a day-to-day transaction, we see that the conference calls, sometimes the networks, you see they're breaking. In education, they are not able to stream. So I think 5G is there to bail us out. When it happens in India, it will bail us out, not just with this problem of pandemic, but also a lot many more things.
I get your point, and when I said that futuristic technology, what I meant, Rajan, and thank you for correcting me, is that in India we still don't have that network being rolled out, and that's why I was looking at it from the Indian perspective. because India is going to play a major role in the post-pandemic, post-COVID world. And on that aspect, I want to go to Jaydev, who actually is a person who looks at how geopolitics will pan out. And therefore, what is your sense, Jaydev, as far as the post-COVID world is concerned, and how technology, more than anything else, will play a role, and nations which have technology rolled out will have an upper hand over others?
Well, good evening, Nitin, and good evening, Rajan. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, and you put us a very difficult question, I think. What is the post-COVID world going to look like is something a lot of people are trying to figure out. But I think
Right,
two things are very clear. Firstly, whatever we are being able to do nowadays in a world where the COVID hasn't yet disappeared is possible only because of technology, particularly I'd call it communications technology. And
sure.
the internet, etc., has really helped us. But if we take a look slightly ahead, and many countries, by the way, I think if I may be permitted, slightly disagree with what Rajan said. I mean, he did say 5G is already here, but not everywhere. There are countries which don't have it. They have other things which are as good, and I'm sure you'll be able to fill us in on that. But if we look ahead, as 5G comes in, from the little I know about it, its capabilities and capacities are immense. I think even where 5G is already there, those are not yet being exploited, the manner in which the makers, or shall I say, the innovators, have envisioned it, or what they're planning to do. And let me mention a couple of examples. One thing that probably is glaring is the manner in which mobility has been affected by COVID. People are not
Right.
traveling because their lives are at risk. So everything has not shut down. People are still doing a lot of business, whatever they can, over the internet, over telephones, etc. My suspicion is that in the post-COVID world, or as we come near a post-COVID world, the amount of travel will be regulated by companies in order to, of course, cut costs, but also see whether they can do without it, and whether systems like what we are using today cannot be a substitute. The second thing, and
Right.
I'm going to go a bit further, the
Yeah.
Chinese are very keen and gung ho on 5G. They haven't got it everywhere, but they started moving, and Huawei is taking the lead in that. But they have also gone in a big way for robots in their factories. So if I look ahead, and 5G is, I mean, actually going to connect millions of pieces of equipment through one network. Now, if we look ahead, in a situation like this, God forbid it happens again, then
Right.
I can even imagine factories being run through this kind of a system without human intervention, by robots, etc., to the extent that they can. And I think uh, the human mind is such that people will already start to think, probably have already started to think, of how they can re-engineer the factories and processes by using this kind of technology. So there's a lot there. But there are, of course, if I may just mention, I was reading the other day an article in the PLA Daily, which is the military newspaper of the Chinese, and they have already
Right.
started figuring out as to how,
Mhm.
according to them, the US and the Western world are going to try and use all this to, pressurize China even more and play the game of geopolitics. Obviously,
Yes.
technology in a big way. So I'll stop there, but I think later on we can maybe touch on it.
I think several important points there. You spoke about how automation through technology and through 5G can become a norm. And I think I want to take that up to Rajan again. And we are still waiting for our guest from the US to join. Perhaps there's some issue there. But Rajan, what Jaydev's point is that I mean, Jaydev made the point that automation and the factories will maybe work on different technologies now because of this kind of a situation reoccurring sometime. But that's why I want you to explain to us and to the viewers that 5G is not only about mobile telephony or just internet. It's also about many other things, Internet of Things, and many other automation and manufacturing can also benefit from 5G. So can you just tell us a bit about that as we go in the future?
So 5G, actually, any G, typically, if you see the G life, or I would say not exactly life, but it's around 10 years before you get the next G. 2G,
Right.
3G, 4G, and 5G. So it's a 10-year. We are at the beginning of the 10-year period, right? And there are going to be more phases. So we are in the second year of 5G, and we've got 8 more years. If you have to go by the math of the past, that every 10 years you will see the next G.
Sure.
So absolutely, some of these use cases which you say are not fully utilized, and they're just the beginning part of a G. The difference that is coming with 5G over the previous Gs was exactly this point which they mentioned, that this is not about mobile anymore. Up till now, the transition was all about mobile, one device which you carry, or probably maybe another device in your home, which was a fixed wireless access or something. With 5G, it touches, and practically, I would say, it sprinkles and connects everything that you see around you. Whether it was in the industry, whether it was on your home, whether it was in the hospital, whether it was the school, wherever. So that actually magnifies and I would say exponentially increases the impact of that G across various industries or various verticals. Let's take healthcare, for example. If I had to imagine the situation which we have here and we had 5G, the remote medicine or the telemedicine, which is becoming a big focus for our government also now in this situation, because
Right.
now social distancing becomes the norm. Our doctors and their lives are, and the paramedics and their lives are so important. They probably will not be able to operate the same freedom as they used to operate in the past. Hence, we will need all sort of technology, and 5G could have bailed us out, because you could have a video conferencing done very easily, which is almost so robust that which we probably cannot rely on today for a very mission critical sort of activity.
Right.
I'm not even talking about mobile surgery, remote surgeries yet, right? But those sort of activities probably can happen in the field of telemedicine. Very important. Education,
Mhm.
we have seen it now, which is not that sensitive, but yet it's very important. Today, all the students sitting in the home are doing video conferencing. They're struggling. Quite a few of them will be struggling to even get a nice connect, right? That could be
Right.
another big place which probably 5G would help us to manage. Now, industrial robotics, which Jayadeva talked about, automation in the industry is not uncommon. It has been there. It has been pursued. What is happening with 5G is the acceleration that has come to that, and the advantage you have now with such a robust technology, with the bandwidths are massive, the latencies are very low, the security is very high. If you talk about these three qualities, 5G gave that quality, which very well suits with industrial automation, right? So
Right.
now, or maybe even smart cities, where critical data has to be turned around, analyzed, quickly given back, and decisions taken. So I see that private networks, which is one of the big ones, which are going to be, we have seen private networks in LTE also. I'm not saying it wasn't there, but I think 5G brings that opportunities where a defense location can have a very secure 5G network, which handles all the delicate and the complicated data which is there, and it stays there and it stays secure. I think that again, a security is a big element. And then if you see what, and if Solomon was there, he would have talked about it. There are quite a few things US did which are basically an eye opener. FCC actually cleared 2 health grants, which are
Mhm.
specifically to ensure that you have telehealth, primarily in the field of health, right? Then they
Right.
have some bills and acts which they have started clearing. They did the CARES Act, which is allocating some $13.5 billion for only
Sure.
K2 schools for under and low income households. So I think those sort of initiatives clearly show that 5G will help prepare us. God forbid such situations come up again. And even if they don't come up again, I think this will actually enable a lot faster development, which the economy will need after such a solid jolt which we got now.
Right. So, on in that respect, Jaydev, coming back to you, and I'm surprised that we've not got Solomon yet. I think there's something wrong in either the connectivity, which we are dependent on, or I think he's not been able to join us for some reason. But I'm hoping that he'll join us. But Jaydev, coming to you, the Chinese have kept ahead of the curve in the jump from 4G to 5G, and if I remember correctly, for almost 10 years now, you've been watching and speaking about Huawei and its spread or its influence spreading across the globe. What is your sense as far as the post-COVID months and years are concerned, that will the Chinese push for it, the Huawei will push for it, that other nations, smaller nations adopt their technology? Is it that only they have the monopoly? What has been your assessment in this respect?
You're right, Nitin, that the Chinese have been pushing Huawei and a couple of other so-called champions of theirs like ZTE and all to go worldwide, to go global, and to capture the markets outside. Huawei particularly has been favored. So, along with the Belt and Road Initiative, the One Belt, One Road, the Belt and Road Initiative, they have pushed Huawei along with that. And Huawei has gone ahead with two things. One is, of course, setting up networks wherever they can, and they go for anything. If it's not 5G, then maybe fixed, landline or whatever they get. They get the contract. The idea is to get the communications of that place, of that country. And the second is AI. So they're trying to set up AI nodes, what Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, calls the digital belt and road. So they're moving on that, and they're moving pretty fast. Now, at this point, when and they have two objectives basically. One is, of course, to capture as much as they can of the global communication network, and second is to set the standards. So both they are trying to do. And with the COVID having happened, the COVID as well as post-COVID, their economy has been hit hard, but they haven't pulled back on some of these key efforts. So Huawei, they have continued pushing. And if I can just mention one small, not diversion really, but just a incident, they pushed United Nations into, which is going to celebrate, I think its 70th anniversary or something, to give the contract for communications for that anniversary to Huawei. And it was only very recently that the Americans, I think, woke up to it and then applied pressure and got that contract cancelled. The point of my mentioning this is that the Chinese are pushing even now, wherever they can find an opening, they are pushing their Huawei. That is one company that is being pushed. The second is their talk about uh, communications in a post-COVID world. How the
Right.
West, and they're already looking at them being isolated to quite an extent. They're not saying it in so many words, but the implication is quite clear what they're trying to look for. And in the process, they're also looking for new markets, which is why India becomes important, though they haven't made friendly gestures, but still they're pushing for the market. But, as far as they are concerned, they are pushing for capturing technology. They've made a program, and they're going for hardware and software. And by 2025, that date, by the way, remains unchanged. They still hope to become technology leaders. I don't know whether they'll succeed, but that's their ambition. Of course, many other things are happening. The technology has been hit. I think a lot of senior people have come out in public and said that, look, if the Americans in the West don't pull out of this economic recession, we are not going to recover either. So things like that are happening. But the eye is on the ball as far as Huawei and technology is concerned.
Yeah, so on that note, I want to come back to you, Rajan. The market, according to one estimate somewhere I read, of for 5G right now is at about $12 billion, and it is expected to go up to something like $45 billion by 2025 in the next 5 years. So, in that respect, are there other companies, other smaller nations who are also looking at harnessing 5G technology, putting in 5G technology? I'm sure even India is doing something. Qualcomm must be working with so many companies across the globe. What is your sense in that respect? Is it China has only got the dominance, or there are other nations and other companies who are working on this?
So I'll take your point a bit later, but first I want to say that we as Qualcomm, and I see that we have fundamentally we have been we call ourselves the R&D engine of the world, and the 5G innovations predominantly we hold a good part of that innovation, and we have been responsible for that's the way we as a company work. Uh, as far as the leadership or the or I would say who is first or second can always be debated, and there will always be an angle to that aspect. But it is not that this belongs to one versus another. Uh, at the same time, there is a little bit of a flexibility that 5G brings in here. And I'll answer your question. So historically in the past, the infrastructure players were predominantly big guys, Ericsson, Nokia, Huawei, Samsung, ZTE. They dominated most of the network elements, right? And I'll try to make it simple. So they the
Right.
base stations, as we call it, are the towers, and they have the back end, and the whole infrastructure belongs to them.
Sure.
5G actually is a very different design. But in the way the 5G network, in the past 2G, 3G, 4G would more or less look the same. 5G brings in a very, very different architecture. This architecture is all about decentralization, disintegration. So if in case of a 4G, typically you would say that, oh, what does a 4G infrastructure look like? And then you'd go and look at a tower where you'll see antennas and some boxes and all that. That was the infrastructure. In 5G, should not be surprised if you look up and I say, oh, that's 5G, and that would be nothing but a box looks as small as your Wi-Fi AP in your house, or in your offices we have something on the ceiling which looks like a LED light or some size like this. Those are 5G base stations. 5G believes in disintegration. That's how the design of or the architecture is. What it also brings in, because it's so disintegrated and the way it is constructed or architected, there are a lot of players who will be able to participate. The smaller players who were not a part essentially in the past will become a predominant part of this play now. So it may not stay as an entire monopoly of one company or an infrastructure player that operator has to buy every element from that guy. That will not happen now. We will have the option of buying those pieces which are now through software connected to each other, and they can be that way disintegrated. And that allows a lot of smaller companies to come in and play. It gives the flexibility to the operators to go and I think there was a news today, if it is, yeah, I think it talks about Airtel and a company in Taiwan called Sarcom who have tied up. That is
Yes.
nothing but exactly that. It came in today, I think today or yesterday. That is nothing but
Right.
that architecture, which is basically they're talking about, let's say, a 4G, but the 5G world is predominantly nothing but that. So we will see that a lot of these infrastructure players will redefine their business models, or probably even their business, as they will see a lot of the smaller partners also getting an opportunity to play. The market is very big. It's not, I'm not saying that the revenues are going to go down. The market in 5G is going to be so massive because then it touches every industry, every vertical, every business. So, but there will be a larger opportunity for other players to also come and play.
So you're, I mean, essentially saying, if I'm got you right, is that with or without China, with or without Huawei, which has been in the news as a very dominant player in 5G, there is a scope for smaller companies, other nations, other technology partners to utilize and roll out 5G anywhere that they want. That's the sense of the thing that I've got from your answer here, Rajan.
Okay, let me take an example, two examples, one local, one global, and then probably you tell me whether you see this or not.
Sure.
Let's say it's publicly known that the Geo network is on Samsung infrastructure, right? It's entirely on
Right.
Samsung infrastructure, right? That's closer home. We know that. Of course, operators do use a mix of infrastructure players. In case of Geo, it's a single supplier of infrastructure, which is Samsung, right? Which is non-Chinese, which is a South Korean company. Another company publicly known to everybody is Rakuten, which is a new company, which is a new operator, sorry, the fourth operator which came up recently in Japan. Their entire infrastructure doesn't have that. They have Nokia and they have this smaller elements which are called small cells. They built the whole infrastructure which is 4G, very quickly going to 5G. In 1 year, they're moving from 4G to 5G, predominantly 5G. That's entirely constructed out of probably elements which do not have any one particular country. In this case, I'm talking about China, if you say so. And of course, there are operators who will have pure entire China network, right? So I would say it's not necessary that you have to worry and say that, okay, if X country is not available, can I still roll out my network? And this holds true not just for China, but for any other, let's say, can I do a network without a Swedish company? Or can I do it without a Finnish company? Or could I do without a Chinese company or an American company? I think you can build the new architecture, and the new 5G networks are all going to have this liberty, luxury, flexibility, whatever you want to call, to construct their whole network. And hence, it becomes a little bit more democratic, I would say.
Yeah, it actually democratizes the technology. But that's a very important point that you made, Rajan. And I have an update that Solomon messed up the time difference, and he just sent me a message apologizing for this. So technology also creates these kind of situations where he has a teleconference in another 3 minutes to do with his people, and he thought it's his time tomorrow morning. So I think we'll have to do without him this time. But let me come back to you, Jaydev, and continue our discussion. From what Rajan has said, that Huawei or any company for that matter does not have a monopoly on 5G. So in that respect, what should India be doing, and what should India be looking at to get the entire rollout right as far as 5G is concerned? And then, of course, depending on the 5G rollout, the life will become a little different than what we have known so far.
I think Rajan made 2, 3 very important points. Firstly, he said that, he mentioned the scope of 5G and how big
Sure.
it could be. The second important point he made was about democratization. Now, if I take an earlier Chinese example, I would assume that that would mean that different parts of India could have different players really operating the same 5G system, which could finally be connected into one grid. Rajan can confirm that or otherwise. The other aspect is, when we were looking at what to use, means India was looking at what to use. The biggest player or the biggest contender was Huawei.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, we did not want to go with Huawei. Some people did, but by and large, I think the feeling was that we don't want to compromise our security structure by having a Chinese 5G. So the choices
Sure.
before us at that point, initial stages, were either Nokia or Samsung or and then
Ericsson.
Ericsson. And then they began. We heard about Vietnam developing its own, and then the Taiwanese also have something. I think they're quite close to it. So and we found that there are Indian players who are also fairly advanced in development of 5G. Now, I think as far as India is concerned, we are not that far advanced in automated motor cars or this, that, and the other at the moment. It'll be another 2, 3 years before we reach that stage. And that is enough time for us to develop our own or get something from somewhere else which is safer from our point of view. And I say
Sure.
that because when you have an unsettled border, when you have a neighbor who's not, to put it mildly, being good neighborly, you might as well not put your eggs in one basket. And that was the
Right.
reaction that India had. So I
Yes.
think what he says about different players coming in is also good. I mean, it would probably encourage Indian companies to come up. And if they're as good, maybe we can pick them up. I think that is what we would look for in India. I think more and more that is the effort. Because don't forget, we're also talking about data sovereignty, localization, all that. So they're all like an integrated package where we want to safeguard what we have, and we want to protect what we have, and in a way that links up with AI also, because the more data you get, the more refined your AI becomes, and we would not like others to get that kind of refinement at our cost. So I think that is how I would look at it.
So in crisis lies the opportunity, clearly. I mean, it's been proven time and again in the past too. But Rajan, one final question to you as far as this technology aspect is concerned. 5G also enables big corporates, big companies to develop and have their own network, 5G network, which can be used for various industrial activities, their own communication, all that. Will that be the way forward as far as Indian manufacturing companies are concerned? I mean, how do you see that panning out in India, apart from mobile telephony and internet connectivity?
So one of under the Make in India or Design in India program of the government, which are like quite a few very brilliant programs have been launched by this government, right? And under those programs, I think what we have seen over the last few years, we have actually cultivated quite a few companies, incubated quite a few companies to develop locally. I'm not in a position to disclose the name of two companies who are working with closely, who are going to
That's fine.
create 5G infrastructure locally here in India, right?
Right.
I think it's a matter of time when they decide to publicize it, then you will see that. But I do not believe that whether it is for a device or a handset or whether it is for a as complicated thing as a 5G infrastructure, we are far away from creating this locally. So policies are conducive, environment is conducive, support is there. Technology we were always very superior in our software, right? It was a matter of bringing the hardware capabilities or design capabilities. Companies like us we are here for the last 26 years. We are doing all of these research, cutting edge research with some 10,000 employees, which we have got. We are doing that here. And that leverage is what we extend to this ecosystem of ours. And you will be very, maybe if you're going to have this conversation another year, you might see it for yourself that this company is already there. So
Oh, great
that
to know
I
that.
think is a very interesting thing which is going to happen in India.
Yeah, that's very good to know, and that actually gives us a lot of hope. One final question to you, Jaydev, as far as the rollout of 5G across the globe is concerned. Do you think now that the world, because of the kind of anger and pushback that is happening against China for whatever it has done in the pandemic, being sort of not being given the kind of easy access about the origins of pandemic, and countries having a rethink, do you think Indian companies which are developing 5G and companies which are non-Chinese will have a better level playing field vis-a-vis Huawei?
Certainly. In fact, I think not only in terms of communications technology, but even in case of other products, we will have easier access into American and European markets. And I say this in the backdrop of the bipartisan approach of the US government or administration to the China issue. And I think we will see increased pressure on China with two objectives. One is, of course, relegate Huawei to the back burner. They're already turned the screws. They're denying it technology, which is hurting Huawei. Their profits have fallen for the first time this quarter. Uh, they're also trying to deny China technology in other sectors in order to delay the 2025 Made in China program. I think that will continue. The second is the pressure that they're putting on China in terms of the economy itself. And here is basic economics. If the US and Europe don't get out of an economic doldrum caused by COVID, no one can export there because they won't be in a position to buy stuff. And China, which has a huge export-oriented industry, will not be able to make it. So that means that the second objective of the United States, I mentioned two, is to weaken the Chinese system itself, which is Xi Jinping, who has been more aggressive, and the Chinese Communist Party. So I think they may not be able to dismantle anything, but even now, I think there are signs of Xi Jinping having a very anxious time, if I may put it diplomatic.
Yeah, I know you're a close China watcher, very avid China watcher, and an important China watcher in India. So that's a very important insight that you've given us. But as I see it, just to wrap up the discussion, technology does not know boundaries, and technology does not recognize, who's able to absorb it. If the technology is there, even smaller countries around the region, and which Rajan is in charge of, the SAARC region, for instance, will be welcome, I think, even in smaller countries. And there lies the opportunity for Indian companies, Indian technology, and Indian scientists and technologists to take advantage of that. Qualcomm, I'm sure, is supporting many of those initiatives. And therefore, there is a lot of hope in using 5G technology in the post-COVID world, which is actually going to be something that none of us are really prepared for. One of the aspects of that is what we are doing right now, sitting at home and talking on video conferencing or Skype or StreamYard, whatever you want to call it. I think that's going to be the way forward in the future. But let me thank both of you for great insights and real expertise on your domain and the subjects that you handle. I'm sure our viewers have benefited from it. We wish Solomon had also joined us, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, really. But thank you very much for this. And viewers, don't forget to watch this again on our YouTube channel, like us on our social media handles, and of course, keep sending the comments and feedback, which we value immensely from all of you. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you.